thinking about it, it really was a weird time back in 2007. We had probably peak cinema come out with amazing Rotten Tomatoes scores, and no one could beat this movie. It was absolutely amazing. Nothing would beat this movie until something atrocious came to mind. Spider-Man 3, the game, put a stale taste into Spider-Man and had it shut down everything. It had the movie shut down. It had Activision crashing down, crumbling on their feet.
You don't want to be like this.
Until, from the heavens, something came about. Spider-Man Web of Shadows. This game, a work of God. This game is so underrated that it basically makes me forgive Spider-Man 3, the video game, which I don't even want to say, because this game made things like this. I'm going to die. But looking past that atrocity of a creation that came down from the deepest pits of hell and then flew back down to the deepest pits of a trash can, we have Web of Shadows, which is, man, there is just some cool stuff in this game. For comic book fans and specifically Spider-Man fans alike, Web of Shadows opens in a really iconic way. It's in the heat of the action. New York City is seemingly being torn to shreds, and Spider-Man looks somber as he walks through the chaos, and as S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarriers are in the sky, S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers are fighting off the symbiote, explosions are everywhere. It's kind of badass though. It has been memed like a million times, but as the prelude plays out and then the game itself sets up, it starts off pretty straightforward, setting it up, making itself a very classic comic book video game with Venom as our main villain, because so help me, they couldn't just get Venom out their ass during that time of the year. But they made it work here. They actually made it work. The game continues. He fights Kingpin, teams up with Luke Cage and Moon Knight, which was very underrated at that time, and eventually Wolverine shows up too. Now Wolverine, along with Spider-Man, is investigating symbiote as all of the typical Marvel stuff is going down here. Spidey dealing with Black Cat and all that type of stuff. It turns out that Venom is capturing and infecting random civilians and essentially turning them into symbiote zombies. Now as you play, the city falls more and more into chaos and is eventually cornered by S.H.I.E.L.D. and turned into a war zone, and Spider-Man must make a decision and team up and fight to save the city and stop Venom. And the game actually takes the open world swinging and crime fighting from the original predecessor that came before it, Spider-Man 2, which is a game like no other, but well, I'll make another video about that. But even something like the Ultimate Spider-Man game, and obviously not something that we want to talk about, Web of Shadows did everything right, but better than the others. I think this game does amazing is adds that level of a apocalyptic chaos to the city and some dual-sided elements to the story and combat. So Peter has the symbiote suit here, and you can actually swap between the two of them in real time. Even in a mid-rear, you now what seems like actually affects combat styles. Quite often, good old red and blue is pretty much classic Spidey fighting with quick hits, jumps, and flips and dodges, while the black suit is a bit more deliberate and with harder, slightly slower attacks, some really cool symbiote style moves, and just chaos causing stuff. Hell, there is even this just big angry power stomp. Like, they added stuff like this. The combat switching is such a nice change up from all the other formulas of games. Like Ultimate Spider-Man also did it right at that time, where you were able to play as Venom, and it was a very fun time to do that. But this game really changed it up. A familiar Activision open world Spider-Man formula, but just with better combat. You even gain XP and you can unlock different moves and combos for each of the two suits in a skill tree that was fairly satisfying to progress through, especially because the combat was so fun. Now, I mean, full disclosure, it did get a little bit repetitive after a while because there wasn't the most enemy variety in the game. You would kind of fight either the shield forces, or you would just fight Kingpin forces, or you would just fight the symbiote civilians, or just symbiotes in general. But one thing this game deserves praise for is its boss fights, man. This game has my favorite Spider-Man boss of all time, and this one is gonna shock you guys, but it is the Electro fight in this game. I feel like this boss fight is really not talked about and should kind of be the way video games do boss fights. Hell, even I think Insomniac should be taking notes from this, because this is how they should probably do stuff in Spider-Man 2. Like, the boss is so fun. You're chasing down Electro through the city. There are these cool QTEs. You get to fight him for a bit, and then you take him down. It's really these cool things that bosses should generally do, and Insomniac should probably do for Spider-Man 2. But the game in general had some really satisfying moments. Like, on the ground, you're punching and kicking and dodging and flipping and throwing, of course, but the newer web striking mechanic was just so awesome to pull off. With proper timing, it allowed you to web zip faster towards enemies and hit them at a high speed. You can then expand upon that and make some really cool scenarios as Spider-Man combos them, yakking his way towards them, and then hitting them or slamming them down, practically even riding them. Like, this man was doing this back in 2008. Where is all of this now? Has everyone forgotten about this? This is why this game is just so underrated and a forgotten gem. This game even stepped it up with its level design, because thanks to the new combat with the air style, some of the missions were just set in the sky, where you would, example, fight Vulture. Vulture, you would have to fight him using your web strike while also trying to keep momentum in the air by striking onto other enemies and getting closer to Vulture. Like, stuff like that really adds variety into boss fights. Like, I don't want to see any more bosses in a Spider-Man game where, oh, we're on the ground, you gave me 3 phases of just me in the exact same area punching him. No, this is not what Spider-Man games should be doing. If this was done in 2008, then we should be more than capable of doing this in 2023. Although I will say a little side note, as fun as Spidey feeling the combat can be, the camera could absolutely be god-awful sometimes. And really, that's the problem. The game was in rough technical shape at times, and it didn't look that great, and was littered with bugs and frame rate issues that for many, along with some repetition, just kind of held it back from greatness. But the big boss moments were a lot of fun throughout, because we got fun new stuff. Black Cat, but infected with the symbiote. Symbiote Wolverine. I mean, come on, it's pretty awesome. And the game is just jam-packed with fun moments like that, and just cool stuff, from fighting on the streets with Luke Cage to the big end boss battles. There were some cool stuff, and this was, of course, a time when these characters weren't the massive mega characters they were, but they were still a pretty big deal. But people who had license to them, where these things could really do whatever they wanted and showed. The game also had this really cool kind of mechanic in the game, where at certain points of the game you would have a decision of your own. You were presented with choices: make the good old Spidey heroic choice, or you could go do the darker, more do whatever it takes symbiote Spidey side, which is kind of cool, because you actually get different endings and different perspectives of the story, which is kind of cool to see, because then you would have a better time playing it the second time around, which makes it really cool. Like choosing essentially to kill Wolverine, for example, or embrace Black Cat over Mary Jane. Like, those changes the story point and makes it really weird. It's crazy. All of this result in a reputation bar that affects the city. The NPCs and villains will either love you or fear you, and basically your allies or your other heroes are there, like 4 different endings. So you all have this packed in this game that is just open world Spidey Treyarch formula that they cracked with the movie game Spider-Man 2. You're an open world fighting collectibles, stopping crime and stuff. So, and eventually you're destroying symbiote hives. You're getting around it, of course, by web swinging in a fun, momentum-based way, where you're in control of your webs and your speed, and your webs need to attach to buildings, and it was just so fun to endlessly swing and do aerial tricks and fight some bad guys. Spider-Man game fans, you guys know where some of these games end up not being nice, but still just fighting and fighting in the air as Spider-Man, just that escapism is just sometimes that's all we need, and in a lot of ways Web of Shadows had that and then some. And this was actually the last kind of big game for Treyarch. For all their flaws, they broke some good ground, especially with Web of Shadows. Now after that, Beenox took over the games for Activision's games, and yes, we got some really cool stuff like Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, but those two were kind of just seemingly not that good of Spider-Man games. There were ups and downs with them until now we've entered this modern new era of Marvel, Disney, PlayStation, and beyond. Will we ever get a Marvel game like this is the better question. Will Spider-Man 2 be able to do something that a game in 2008 was able to do? Will it be able to give us that fan service that we so deserve and we are kind of forgetting in this day of age? Will Spider-Man games learn from their predecessors, and will they learn from this underrated gem of the game? I don't have those answers, but we have to wait till fall of 2023.